Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Hale. I am the president of the newly formed chapter of Friends of Mineralogy here in Virginia. And today I'm going to be giving a presentation on mineral diplomacy. This is part of a larger presentation that I've given on the mineral security nexus. But the goal of today's presentation is to talk a little bit about how we can use minerals to explore global issues in society. So we can always start with a statement of why minerals matter. For the audience that's probably watching this, we all have a passion for minerals in geology. So we understand their importance in society. However, when we ask the question, why do minerals matter to an average person in the public, it may not be as clear. As technology becomes more advanced over time, the materials that are used to make it become more abstract. It's not as if we can look at a train and be able to tell all the different components and materials that make up that train as we can with an electric vehicle or with the cell phone. As parts become a lot smaller, it's more abstract. And so bringing things back to reality becomes a little bit more difficult. And so consumers who buy these products often are unaware of where those materials come from. At the same time, though, the public, even though they don't know what makes up a lot of their devices that they use every day, including the virtual capacity to have these conversations online with our computer monitors and our cell phones, the public is becoming more aware of the political, social, and economic consequences of mining. So what ends up happening is we start seeing an increasing gap between where we know minerals are used in the products. However, there's more of an emphasis on the negative outcomes of mining operations. And so there's a huge need to educate and engage more on how minerals are useful for things that we see over here to the right, such as wind turbines, electric vehicles, MRI machines. Minerals are going to be important for the future of society. And so when we think of topics that minerals can be connected to, there's a whole list of them, but some of the ones that are the most important and why minerals matter for the future are such topics such as decarbonization, trying to reach net zero carbon neutrality, climate change mitigation, how do minerals play a role in climate change and trying to reduce greenhouse gases, the energy transition, moving to electric vehicles and to an electric system is going to require a lot of mineral materials, conflict. A lot of the materials that are located in certain part of the world are in countries that may have a lot of the reserves. However, they have high political and economic instability. And so that creates a lot of concerns for the supply of these minerals in the future. And of course, consumerism. People are so used in this society to purchasing the best product every year, getting a new cell phone, getting a new laptop, getting a new graphics processor. However, as we saw with COVID-19, supply can be fragile during a disruption. And so this future and where we look for new mineral resources and how we continue to have increasingly needs and higher demands could become a problem. And so there's really no question that mining will be needed, that more mining will be needed. However, questions that should be discussed instead of whether or not we should mine are things such as, can we mine in an environmentally sustainable way? Can we recycle these materials? Can we find alternatives possibly? I mean, in reality, there's only a certain amount of the periodic table that we can use, so the palette is limited. And then of course, the circular economy, which is a new phrase that we talk a lot about, which is how do we integrate from the extraction to the manufacturing to the end use, all the way to recycling, and trying to create as much as we can an economy where we recycle and put minerals back into the market rather than having a ton of e-waste. And so over to the right here, as I said, you can see all these different products for this green energy future. We also have defense applications, which use a lot of minerals. So there is a high security component to this. And then at the bottom here is a really good chart that shows you all the different elements that are designated by the USGS criticality assessment and the different sectors in the industry that are used in the future with these different mineral resources. So when we talk about the pathway forward, there's really three options here. If we want to reach the individual country plans, so let's say the electric vehicle strategy plans for 2030, we're going to have to increase raw material needs by 2 times globally. In order to reach the Paris Climate Accords, it's 4 times. And in order to reach a net zero carbon emission by 2050, it's 6 times. These numbers were given at the Missouri Science and Technology Symposium that was held earlier this summer. And this basically showcases that if you want to have new wind turbines, electric vehicles, you're going to have to actually mine more mineral resources to actually develop that green infrastructure. But there's a lot of obstacles, of course, in doing this. Public education is a huge issue. A lot of the industry says that the public does not know about the future of mining and how we use minerals and their role in society. Permitting timelines is a big problem here in the United States, and then also the lack of permitting, which could create environmental concerns. Of course, with domestic processing, most of the facilities have actually transferred overseas, so that becomes a big problem. And then the job market training. Moving from a carbon-based economy where we focus on a lot of coal and oil and petroleum exploration over to mineral processing and metallurgy. And then of course, there's the China and the US competition dynamic, which could stress the market and the supply of these critical minerals. And then of course, as I've mentioned, the public opinion of mining in the United States, which is the not in my backyard principle. But even though we have to overcome such large obstacles, we have to keep some things in mind, such as environmental protection, ethical practices. Many of these operations that would be mined domestically are in indigenous land. So we have to think about fair and equitable rights for indigenous populations. We also have to ensure that we have a social license to operate in these communities. And then of course, we have to work on conflict resolution skills to make sure that the negotiations for these mining operations in this green future provides an equitable result for everybody. And so the question here is, how can society overcome these large issues? Well, I argue that we use minerals to explore these critical issues. And in this regard, it's time to reframe minerals as part of a problem to part of the solution. What I mean is that minerals should not just be looked at as part of the supply-demand dilemma or as a negative thing that harms the environment, but rather, what's the importance of minerals in developing an electric vehicle? What is the importance of minerals in creating hydrological operations and dam operations across the world? These green technologies and these green futures will require new mineral resources. So we have to be able to reframe it so that minerals are not just a negative component in this discussion. And for us that love minerals and have a passion in mineralogy and geology, we realize that every rock and mineral has a story, from its geologic creation to its extraction and to its eventual end use. However, that story is often lost or improperly framed. We forget to talk about it in an interdisciplinary way, and minerals end up just becoming something that's pretty or aesthetic without really any other meaning behind it. But in reality, for hundreds of years, humans have used art to explore contemporary issues, such as race and gender issues. So why can't we use minerals, which are technically natural art, to give a voice to communities who do not have them, to highlight global issues that may seem abstract, but to bring them back down into reality and to educate the public about how these minerals actually make up things that have a direct impact in their life and future generations. And so I say that minerals have to be viewed through this cross-discipline and holistic perspective. Their stories can help frame curriculum and enhance exhibits so that they're more than just a pretty showcase of aesthetic beauty. They're actually something that plays a larger role in discussions for societal development. And when I travel around and I go to all these different talks, I hear a lot of complaints from industry and policymakers that they're desperate to reach critical public audiences, that there's a huge gap and that public education is critical. But if the public loves minerals and they have this natural fascination with their aesthetic beauty, well, then we need to reframe minerals again as a tool to approach these audiences in an outreach and engagement strategy that has never been done before. And so what I have here is basically an overview of, like I said, mineral diplomacy, where we start from the beginning, where minerals are a tool for public engagement, and we move outwards, where we use minerals to support industry, taking their byproduct, which may be the minerals that we love and have passion for, and actually using them to develop rock and mineral kits for local teachers in high schools, using minerals to educate about how industry is necessary. We can also use minerals to engage in curriculum development, where it's not just test the hardness, the streak, and the specific gravity of the mineral. Rather, how can minerals be connected to physics and economics and international affairs? And through all these things, we can also engage in public policy and public education. How can minerals be used as a tool to engage a population who are all voters and issues that are going to be critical to their own future and to their kids' future? And of course, all of this generates a need for domestic mining and processing, where the US is going to have to recognize that it's going to have to mine domestically in order to maintain a sustainable supply chain in the future, especially in a time where China and US competition is rising. This is kind of an example that I showcase where we see the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's a perfect case study for this. We have conflict minerals, which is tin, tantalum, tungsten, and gold, that create a lot of issues for conflict and insurgencies that finance their insurgency through mineral extraction. We also have cobalt, which is a critical component in lithium-ion batteries for the electric vehicle transition. And you can see here that we can use pictures and engaging displays to encapsulate audiences, to put a more meaningful message than, hey, this mineral is pretty. But we also can use beautiful specimens such as pink calcite, which has cobalt in the crystal lattice. And then another thing that we can also talk about is how in reality, it's not even cobalt that the Congo is actually mining. They're actually mining for copper. And so the copper market is actually the key interest. It's cobalt that is a byproduct of copper that it becomes the big discussion point because the Congo has over 70% of the global cobalt reserves. And so with all this said, what then is the role of our mineral community? Well, it's an increasingly important one, I think. Minerals in society are normally viewed from a policy lens, a security lens, or from a market or industrial lens, but rarely from a civil society lens. And so mineral groups can create an increasingly larger role in reframing a debate and engaging in a dialogue how mining will be necessary for the future and how it can be done in an equitable and ethical way. Just think about it. There's hundreds of mineral societies and groups all across the country that are interested in minerals and mineral education. However, they're often left out of these critical discussions with policymakers, industry professionals, and sometimes academics. The whole point of FM was to bring these communities together. And so really in the past, the mineral community has played little to no role in this discussion. And so by becoming more involved in this discussion, using our passion and dedication to mineral education, using the beautiful mineral specimens as tools to engage a public about the use of minerals in the future, we can not only increase our membership by finding a new mission and cause for our groups, we can improve access. We've done this in Virginia. We're working with industry to help promote their own industrial operations, has actually aided us in getting into new mining operations. And then, of course, it provides legitimacy to the industry and academic communities and policymaking communities who have often left out the mineral community as a key actor in this discussion. And so I say it's now our time as a community to seize this opportunity. The moment is right. We can become a critical actor in reaching to thousands across the United States who need this information, whose information will actually transform the way that they think about minerals, the way that they think about the green economy, and the future of this country. And so we have to gain a seat at that table, because if we lose this opportunity, it will be unfortunate. Minerals can be a tool that can educate so many people about the future issues that our society will face. And just to give you an example as we end here, this is a post that our new outreach committee made recently. It's the geology of a pencil. It shows you all the different components that make up a pencil, the different minerals you can see here. A very simple post with a short article, but the post reached over 230,000 views with over 1,300 shares on social media. While these people may not be engaged members in FM, they actually learn something, they take it away with them, and they can go out and tell people about, hey, did you know that there's a supply chain for pencils and all these different minerals actually comprise a pencil? And so stuff like this is what we need to be doing. This is something that the mineral community can access and provide as a resource that I think even the academics, the industry, and the policymakers have a very hard time doing currently. So again, our opportunity is now, and I think we should take it.